Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over how to play like a sweat on console Fortnite. I know that's a little bit of an odd video title, but here's what I mean by that. The term sweat in Fortnite is typically used as an insult towards players that are really good at the game and players who try really hard to get a lot of kills and wins. So even though it's meant to be an insult, in a way it's actually kind of a compliment. You're never really going to call a terrible player that you easily kill a sweat. You're going to save that term for a player who either kills you or at the very least gives you a very difficult fight. I see comments on my videos all the time that say things like, oh, look at this dude trying so hard in public matches, he's such a sweat. And yeah, sure, that is true, but playing that way is how I have the most fun, so I don't see anything wrong with being a sweat, and I'll actually take it as a compliment. So the purpose of this video is to teach you guys the specific traits and playstyle characteristics that most quote-unquote sweaty players share, and if you follow the instructions, you yourself can become a sweat if that's what you desire. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so one of the things that most sweats have in common is that they love to land at hot drop locations. So back in Fortnite's prime, that would have most likely been Tilted Towers, RIP. After it got destroyed, they would have moved on to somewhere like Salty or Pleasant, and nowadays they would probably be landing at a mythic POI like Caddy, the Authority, or the Shark back in Season 2. So there are two very important reasons why sweats love landing at hot drop areas. First off, it almost guarantees them a ton of fights very early in the match. Landing outskirts can be good in certain situations, especially if you're really trying to get a win, but you're also severely limiting the action that you're going to get in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game or so. Now, if you don't want any action, then I guess that's a good thing, but that's not really how sweats roll. When you land at one of these super contested areas like the Authority or Caddy Corner, it's incredibly rare that any less than about 5 enemies land with you, and sometimes it can even be like 10 to 15. So you know it's going to be super high action, which I personally think is really fun, and also if you can successfully clear that area, you're now well on your way to a high kill game. Also, the other reason why sweats love to land at hot drop locations is because the loot sets them up for the rest of the match. Obviously, these areas have a lot more chests than most other places you can find, but with mythic POIs, it goes well beyond that. First off, you have the vaults, which are just insane in general. It gives you enough shield to get to 100 no matter what amount you start at, and also it allows you to stack your inventory with pretty much as much shield as you would want. Also, probably the biggest positive of mythic POIs is that you get the mythic weapons and items from the boss. Getting the mythic charge shotty, shockwave launcher, grappler, or unlimited chug jug is plain and simple a massive advantage over everybody else in the lobby. So yeah, sure, you probably are going to die off the rip way more than you would if you just landed somewhere else, but in the games where you survive, you're literally guaranteed to be stacked for the rest of the match. And that sort of high risk, high reward mindset fits perfectly with how sweats want to play. The next thing that you pretty much need to do to be a sweaty player in Fortnite is push every player that you damage and most players that you see. This is without a doubt the most essential mindset to the sweat playstyle. You have to believe that you're good enough to outplay and eliminate the vast majority of enemies that you run into. You need to have a mindset going 24/7 where once you damage an opponent, the only direction that you want to go is forward directly towards them. You know that if you tag them, they're going to box up, probably try to heal, and play very passive for at least a couple of seconds. And that gives you all the opportunity that you need to really apply pressure on them and basically make their life as difficult as possible. Me and my friends have a somewhat fitting term for these players. We don't always call them sweats, we actually call them sharks most of the time. Because once they sense blood in the water, so to say, by dealing damage to you, they're not going to let up and they're just going to keep pushing forward until either you die or they do. However, it's important to point out that even though sweats are very aggressive in general, the good ones also aren't stupid. If you have really low health or really low mats, or the enemy's just in a much better overall position than you, as much as you may want to push that fight, you really need to resist that urge and live to fight another day. In my opinion, that right there is the difference between successful sweats and players that try to be sweats but just end up dying most of the time. The next really defining characteristic of a Fortnite sweat is that they want to get high ground every single fight, and they love it when opponents turn fights into battles for high ground. And as I've mentioned before, this is especially advantageous for console sweats. The main reason why getting high ground fits so well with this playstyle is because it allows you to finish fights very quickly. If I start ramping towards high ground and my opponent does the same thing, I know that if I can ramp over him and beat him to that high ground position, there'll be about a 2 to 3 second window where I can edit down or just jump onto him and make a really effective offensive play. And even if that doesn't work out, as long as you keep high ground, your opponent either has to try to retake it or box up. If they try retakes, unless they're absolutely cracked, they're going to prevent you with a bunch of opportunities to deal significant damage. And if they decide to box up, which is what most people will probably do, yeah, it may be a tad bit annoying to deal with, but as long as you're patient, you're eventually going to either break and replace one of their walls or just phase through into their box. So though boxing up early in an engagement to force your enemy into a box fight has become a pretty popular strategy, it just doesn't fit the sweat playstyle as much as build battling for high ground does. Since box fights are so defensive in nature, they can drag on way longer than a sweat would ideally want because they want to get that kill as quick as possible. I can totally relate to this personally. When I go up against a really good defensive box fighter, I just feel like I'm wasting a lot of time, and as that fight drags on, I become more and more likely to just make a stupid YOLO 50-50 play to try to confirm the elimination. Another mindset that you're going to need to accept to be a sweat is that you can't have problems abusing overpowered items or mechanics in Fortnite. I see these comments every time I mention any kind of tactic that could be considered OP, saying things like, oh, you need to abuse aim assist to get kills, you aren't actually good at the game, you're just a sweat that ruins it for everyone else. And because opinions like that get spread throughout the community, there are players that legitimately try to avoid using any controversial items or just tactics in general. I specifically remember back during like season 8 to 9 when legacy aim assist was a hot topic for PC players to hate on, there were controller players that legitimately refused to use L2 spamming because they felt like it was a cheap tactic. And you know, that's totally fine. I'm not going to try and force people to play the game in any specific way or anything, but sweaty players don't really care what other people think about how they play. The mindset is basically, don't hate the player, hate the game. As long as you aren't cheating and only taking advantage of items and features that Fortnite intentionally added, that's fair game in my opinion. I'm going to use whatever gives me the best chance of getting as many kills and wins as possible, and I really don't feel bad about that at all. The final playstyle trait that's almost necessary to be a sweat is speed. This applies to a few different things, so let me break it down a bit. First off, building and editing. Some people say that being able to build and edit fast is an overrated skill, but I generally disagree. The vast majority of sweats care about the game a lot, and therefore they put the time in on editing courses and creative free building to really improve their building and editing speed. That gives them a significant advantage of pretty much every fight they get into, and it helps them finish those fights really quickly. It isn't impossible to be a sweat with more average building and editing speed, but it definitely does put you at a very noticeable disadvantage. But speed doesn't just stop there. It also applies to their mindset while playing the game in general. Sweats aren't going to play some super passive and slow playstyle in fights and basically camp for 5 minutes straight in a power position. They want to go and move on to the next engagement in their area. It's almost like they play the game with a short attention span, and as I alluded to earlier, that's a big reason why they don't really love slow-paced box fights. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. Pretty simple yes or no question here. Do you consider yourself to be a quote-unquote sweat when you play Fortnite? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.